Well, welcome everybody from wherever you're dialing in from today, or whether you're on your favourite streaming service. My name's Paula Jones Hunt, and I'll be taking you through the Coaching Cafe today. Natalie's on leave at the moment, so it's me and Bridget at the helm, and we will do our very best. So welcome, Bridget. Thank you for joining me.
A pleasure, Paula, always. Thanks for having me.
So today's session, we're looking at mental health in the workplace. We're going to do 2 weeks on this one. This one's about the role of coaching. And as we begin, I would like to acknowledge the traditional owners and custodians of the lands on which we meet today and their continuing connection to the land, waters, and communities of Australia and the lands from all around the world upon which you might be joining us. We pay our respects to them and their elders, past, present, and emerging, and elders from Indigenous communities from around the world. I really love coming together on a Friday. It's one of my favourite things to do. And I love that we've got people on the line from all over the world. We were getting the state of the nation from a weather perspective. We've got people who've been in Europe. We've got all around Australia. We've got Florida. So it's just great to have you all join us on a Friday. So, our agenda for today, we are going to look at mental health and thinking about mental health from a performance zone perspective. So, what does it look like when you're in good mental health, and what might it look like when you're not in good mental health? And we'll talk a little bit about the impacts that that has from a workplace perspective. We're going to look at, from a coaching perspective, when we need to be paying attention and what it is that we need to be paying attention to in our coaching conversations. And then we're specifically going to look at what is the role of the coach in a mental health conversation, and what do we need to do in that coaching space. Oh, we've just heard too, Kuala Lumpur is a beautiful 27 degrees, which is lovely.
Mm.
Um, as always, this is about creating a shared learning experience. So as we're going through, we'd love to, if you've got comments or you've got questions, then please pop them into the chat and we'll make sure that we get to them. We love having thought-provoking conversations, so anything that you've got to add would be great. And for those of you who are looking for your ICF CCEs, they will be available for you after the session. All right, shall we get into it, Bridge?
Yes.
All right, so before we do begin though, um, we will be speaking about mental health in the workplace, and for some, you may have a lived experience with mental health, or someone you know may have a lived experience. And for some participants, you may find that the content is confronting or it could cause distress. So if that happens, please feel free to reach out to us in the chat. Or if someone that you know, or if you or someone you know that needs any additional support, we've got some places that you can go from an Australian perspective. So we've got Lifeline, lifeline.org.au, Beyond Blue, so beyondblue.org.au. Or if life is in danger, then please call 000, which in Australia is our emergency services, or the emergency services in wherever you're dialing in from. There are services that are available for you. All right, so I thought this was a good place to start. So the World Health Organization has defined mental health as a state of well-being in which the individual realizes their own ability, can cope with the normal stresses of life, can work productively and fruitfully, and is able to make a contribution to their community. And I think there's three really important components in here. It's one about them as themselves and being able to live the full life that they want to live. And we know that stresses happen in life, that we can't remove all stress from our life, but that as things come up, that the person can cope with the normal stresses that are happening. And then there's the work, so that they can come to work and work productively as they want to. And then in there is also the contribution to their community. So it's how you are interacting with your family, with your friends, with the broader community around you. So if we're thinking about this, it's about the person actually being able to be engaged in their life, in how they want to be engaged in their life, and that they're able to cope with the things that are happening going along with them. So that's the definition of mental health. So when we're talking about someone who's struggling with mental health or has a mental health um, illness or concern, then we're talking about someone who's not able to do those things. So they're not living the life that there's an impact to them being able to do the things that they want to do and being able to go to work and work productively and make the contribution that they want to as part of their community. Is there anything you'd like to add in there, Bridget?
I was just thinking, Paula, too, that, the word there around the individual realizes their own ability too. So having that level of self-awareness, I think, is really, really key in terms of being able to address that as well, rather than not really understanding what might be going on.
Yeah, absolutely. And so when we think about when we're thinking about where that person is, we use this diagram, which is our performance zone. And so for those of you who are listening, it's a half dome that has in the middle is the green zone, which is sustainable. So the person is coping well and functioning effectively. And if you dial it to the left, which goes into the orange zone, they're struggling. So finding things difficult and struggling to cope. And then if we head into the red zone, it's overloaded. So feeling overwhelmed and struggling to function. And when we think about mental health, it's thinking about it on this continuum. So we move between these zones over time, and it can be influenced by life experiences, biology, access to services, our own coping skills, and knowing that this performance zone is individualized. So not everyone will respond to things the same way, but this is the individual's performance zone. And on any given day, we might move in between any of those zones. You might start off and you're having a great day, and then something happens and it pushes you into the red zone, or it pushes you into the yellow zone, and then you come back. When we're thinking about mental health, though, it's about someone who's moved out of the green zone and is having trouble getting back into the green zone, and it's happened for a sustainable period of time. So, in general, when we're thinking about whether or not mental health is a concern for someone, is if it's been more than 2 weeks that that person is really struggling to come back into the green zone, or is spending a lot of time in the other zones, that's when when it starts to become a concern, because they're not able to bring themselves back into it. So it's not just I'm having a really bad day, I'm angry about something. It's more that sustained and that it's having an impact on that person. So we think about it as this zone, and where is that person in the zone, and how are they feeling in the zone, and how are they able to come back into the green zone as they need to be.
Mm.
Yeah, so what are you thinking about that, Bridget?
Yeah, I find that really interesting, and again brings me back to that ability to be aware of being in one of those zones that are not the green zone, and understanding or having the capacity to be able to either bring ourselves back into that green area, or knowing how to, or what resources and tools we can use to ensure that we can get that support to come back into that green zone is really important. So awareness again, a key, I think.
Yeah, and the statistics from mental health first aid in Australia is that 1 in 5 Australians will suffer from a mental illness in any year.
Mm.
So 1 in 5 is 20%. 20%
Mm.
of Australians will suffer from a mental illness. And I actually think that statistic is low.
Mm.
So the reason I think that statistic is low is because when they did the research was done via telephone.
Ah.
And so the reason I think this statistic is low is that it's missing portions of the Australian population. So thinking about it, it's missing um, anyone who doesn't have a phone, and thinking about that, it could be people who are homeless,
Mm.
which and I suspect that might drive the that statistic up, um, and also um, anyone incarcerated. So they wouldn't have been included in their remote communities, wouldn't be in that space. So there's lots of demographic who I don't think were in there. So it's actually quite common for someone to have a mental illness and for some people, it lasts a short period of time, and for others, it lasts a long time. And so, some people, if it's a lifelong illness for them, and for other people, it's a moment in time.
Mm.
There's been a question about the difference between the yellow and the red, and I
Mhm.
think it's about the yellow is I'm struggling, but I can move myself back into green easier, and overloaded is I don't feel like I can't function at this point. And so whether it's not and it's really up to the individual as to do I feel like I'm more orange or do I feel like I'm more red? But for me, if you're in that orange, you're still moving about, but you're finding it much harder. Whereas red is I'm feeling overwhelmed and I don't think I can move forward with that.
Mm. And I was going to add too with those particular areas in terms of what that might also look like physically. I think too in that orange zone, it's almost like that feeling of being stagnant and not being able to move, it's feeling stuck. And sometimes in that red zone, when you're overloaded, you're overdoing things and you're
Yeah.
overstimulated that overwhelmed, trying to do everything at once type of feeling, I think can in terms of a visual that could also represent those two colors potentially.
Yeah. Rebecca said this would be a great image to show a client and ask them where they would see themselves. So
Mm.
good to get an indication if we are, as coaches, are concerned. Absolutely. And even just talking to people about thinking about where they are in that continuum. If you think about green as being coping well, and if you think about orange as not coping as well, but still functioning, and red as feeling overloaded or not functioning, where does that person feel they're sitting at that time?
Mm.
Yeah. So, from a workplace. Oh, sorry. So Sebastian, just thinking about it so Sebastian indicated that from a color blindness perspective, what would that look like? And it could even be about how you're feeling. So as opposed to a color, it could be I'm feeling good and I'm feeling well, or I'm feeling sluggish, or I'm feeling like I'm not moving at all, stuck
Mm.
in quicksand. So where on that continuum are you feeling? And Janelle said the red zone is also where, as coaches, we might need to refer people elsewhere. And absolutely, we're going to get to that because it is one of those things in the core competencies around knowing when is it time to coach and when might we need to refer someone. So, from mental health problems are common in the workplace, and there are a number of things that can affect performance. So, when we're thinking about how it plays out in the workplace, we are looking at things like decreased productivity, decreased engagement, increased absenteeism, inability to concentrate, inability to interact with others effectively, conflict in teams or with managers, or increased errors and accidents. So if someone is struggling in this space, these are the sorts of things that can demonstrate to us that there's a problem going on. And if we think about it in the workplace, these are all quite critical areas. So, for example, if we work in particularly in environments that safety is critical, so if I'm thinking mining, those sorts of areas, but even things like health, um, we're not wanting increased errors or accidents because it has a significant impact to people in their environment.
Mm.
And so this is really just about highlighting what that impact can be in the workplace.
Absolutely. It's the impact on self and also the impact on the environment and impact on other people as well. It's like a bit of a domino effect.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's about recognizing it for someone where there's a change. And so the thing about it is knowing when to pay attention. And I think this is for us as coaches, what's really important is that and in the workplace. So for those of you who are leaders or who are working in-house, it's we need to start paying attention if there's a major change in a person's normal way of thinking or behaving. So if we are noticing something different, and if you think about when we talked about it initially, we talked about it's been happening for more than 2 weeks. So if you're working with someone every day and over a 2 week period, you've noticed that something is changing for them or they're not appearing to be their normal self, then that's when we need to start thinking about, is it time to have that conversation? Now, for some of us who are coaches and we only see a client every 3 to 4 weeks, you might not see that direct link because you don't see them every day, but you will notice something different in the conversations and the coaching that you're having with that person, and it's picking up on those changes. So it's things about what are they saying or how are they responding to questions differently? What does their body language tell you about what's going on for them? And these are the cues that we need to pick up on when we're coaching somebody. Um, Julianne added in that, so with more and more people working from home, it can make these tricky to identify. Correct.
Mm.
Because some of the things that we've commonly done in the workplace, which is like you get to the meeting and there's a couple of minutes before the meeting starts and people have a little chat. And that is getting lost more and more because we're just jumping straight into the meeting and off it goes. The corridor conversations, the water cooler chats, you just sit down and you have lunch in the lunchroom, and there's people that you don't always talk to who are there that you might notice these things of them. So I absolutely agree that the people working from home, which I do, and I absolutely love it, but it does raise that idea of how are we making sure that they're engaged with everybody else and not isolated? And it makes it easier to, for example, we put backgrounds on, so you can't see what my background looks like. But if my background previously looked neat and tidy, which I have to tell you it never would, and it suddenly starts looking not neat and tidy anymore, that's actually another sign that I'm not on top of the things that I would need to be on top of. So really paying attention is important. And some of those possible behavioural signs are withdrawal or isolation. So people who would normally be attending meetings suddenly stops attending meetings, or they're talking about not going to things that they normally love to do. So for me, example, I love AFL football. It's my joy. If I suddenly said I'm not going to go to the football anymore, that would be a red flag to say what's going on for Paula if she doesn't want to go anymore.
Yeah.
It could look like reduced concentration. So people who previously had, were really focused, not focused. irritability or emotional reactivity. So someone responding in an overreaction or an underreaction. It's actually just different for that person. It could look like fatigue or low energy, changes in attendance or punctuality, or a drop in work quality or productivity. The key for me in here is change. You're noticing something different, you're seeing something different, you're hearing something different from that person, and that it lasts longer than that 2 weeks. Bridget, I'll bring you in here. So what are some of the things that you're looking for when you're coaching someone in this space?
Mm. Yeah, I think it could be anything from the fatigue or low energy. You might notice it when you're having a conversation with someone, the tone of their voice or their lack of desire to move forward with something or something that they may have once upon a time been really excited to achieve or to aim for, all of a sudden loses that interest. It's almost like the wind is out of their sails and it's almost, yeah, you know, you can hear it. You can hear it in the voice or the lack of energy. I think when you're coaching someone and having conversations, they are signs, potential signs that there's something not uh, quite right or something's going on for that person. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. And Julianne also said she picked up someone was struggling years ago because they started arriving at work with clothes unironed when
Mm,
they used to be immaculately dressed. And that is absolutely a sign. So not their appearance. So don't is not wearing makeup when they used to wear makeup, is not um, presenting. And you're right off on camera. That does get trickier because you can look like you do at the top, but not necessarily down the bottom. And it's sort of like putting on a persona for that particular point. And sometimes it's easy for people to do it for short bursts as well. So there might be a lot going on for them, but for those little bits, they turn up and they mask in some ways for that particular meeting and then go back. So it can be really tricky as we're trying to do as you're trying to pick up those signs. Absolutely.
yeah.
So I
Mm.
guess the question then is, what does that mean for us as coaches when we do identify that or we're concerned for someone? And the really important thing for us to note, and it's really important from our core competencies perspective as well, is that our role as a coach is not as a therapist or a counselor, and it's certainly not to diagnose either. Um, we don't make we don't make any assumptions about what a diagnosis might be. So we not saying to someone, I think you've got depression, or from what you're showing me, it looks like you've got anxiety. As coaches, we need to really stay out of that space because it's not the coaching space. Um, our space is to notice and acknowledge. So we're recognizing shifts in mood, thinking, behavior, or functioning without that diagnosing. So it's just, I've noticed this,
Mm.
or I'm acknowledging that this as we go through with no diagnosis. As in that coaching space, we're creating trust and safety. We're holding that respectful, confidential space for our client that's non-judgmental, which is really the core of coaching when we think about it. And as coaches, have this beautiful space where we can have these conversations because we've created that trust and we've created that safe space for them to explore what's happening for them at this particular point in time.
Absolutely. It's sort of approaching the conversation with that genuine curiosity and that safe space for people to reflect and think for themselves as to what might be happening for them.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's important we stay within our scope. So support reflection and choice, but no assessment. We're not diagnosing. We don't treat mental health concerns. Um, and we encourage support pathways. So if someone is struggling, helping them to find what will work best for them, so that referring through to appropriate support such as employee assistance programs, GPs, psychologists, managers, HR, or crisis services when needed. We may need to pass them and refer them through to a crisis service if we are concerned for their safety. And sometimes people don't know what services are available for them. And so just helping them be aware of what services they can access. We can still ask great coaching questions in here around what services are you aware of? What services have you tried previously? Who else could you talk to that would be of assistance for you at this point in time? And then we listen and respond with care. So using presence, empathy, active listening to explore what the client needs right now. So it's not about solving the problem for them. It's about what would help you right now. What would you need right now to move forward with this? And prioritizing safety. So if there is a risk of harm to self or others, that we follow duty of care, organisational policy and emergency pathways as required. Ian's also added, of course, when setting up the coaching agreement, we would have let the client know that our conversations are confidential unless they disclose issues that require mandatory reporting or they are in danger of hurting themselves or other persons. That is absolutely correct. It's part of the coaching contract that we establish with people. So I think the key message here around our roles as coaches is that we are actually primed to be able to have these conversations with people because of the way that coaching is set up. Because we've established that at the beginning, and we develop environments that are safe, and because one of our main role is to listen, and help that person work through and gain that awareness that they might need. So I actually think coaching is exactly where we need. It is a really great space for us. The key being that it shouldn't move into something that appears to be a mental health concern, is that we then pass them on to the next person. And I think of it a little bit like first aid. If it's an injury, first aid is if you are first on scene and your job is to assess and do what needs to be done, and then you pass them on to the medical professional.
Mm.
And I think when I think of mental health, I think of it in that same space as well.
Yes.
Anything else you'd like to add in there, Bridget, around the role of coaching from a mental health perspective?
I think you've covered it perfectly, Paula. I think, absolutely we're going in with that open, non-judgmental, curious space, that allows people to reflect if they need to, and making sure that any question we ask is open. We always talk about the who, what, where, when, how, those open questions, rather than leading or having people think we're telling them what to do, but just being open and curious.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, Bridget, we have come to the end, and I thank everybody for contributing today. That it was, I really love when the community connects in with us. And next week we'll be looking at mental health and looking at the barriers around mental health and how we can assist from that perspective. So, as always, we have our certificate for in workplace and business coaching, our diploma in leadership coaching. There's a QR code there for anyone who wants to connect in with us and find out more about the programs that we have. Thank you, everybody, for joining us today, and we are looking forward to catching up with you next week. And go forth and have a lovely weekend and enjoy the time with your friends and family.
Wonderful. Bye, everybody.
All right, I've stopped the recording because that was the next part of my IT things.